Skin coloring and rendering. The first thing to do is applying the base color. No, it is not, actually. The first step is, as always, find your references. Your references is based on how much skin you wanna paint. Is it only the face skin, or does it include the skin on the body? You get it. To be more accurate, you can also look for skin tone references. However, I always use this one very versatile method that can be applicable to any skin tones. Anyway, for base color, I always use muted colors. These colors are less saturated and look dull, but they're much easier to control than vibrant colors. What about grayscale? Yeah, absolutely. You can use grayscale or black and white. They're even easier to paint with because you only worry about the grays. But adding in the colors requires more effort, so I'm sticking with muted colors. Now we move on to the shading. I've seen a lot of people using circles to explain it, so it's easier to understand. So let's do the same thing, eh? So the versatile method I was talking about is by using the multiply layer. So the multiply layer makes any color darker and more saturated. So even though I'm using muted colors, it doesn't look too gloomy. Okay, so this is the comparison between shading with multiply and normal layer. As you can see, the multiply adds more depth. It's darker and more saturated. Compare it to the normal one, where the shading kinda looks monotone. To pick the shading color, I first use the eyedropper tool on the base color. Then I open the color wheel, and then move this a little bit to the right, and then drag this down a little bit like that. And after that, just use an airbrush to apply the shading. If it's not dark enough, just open the color wheel and then drag it slightly to the right again, and then drag this slightly down and reapply the shadows. Now all you have to do is just give it a little bounce light, then maybe add some blue for variation, apply the soft light, and give it a tiny highlight. Easy, right? Well, of course it's easy. It's a freaking ball. We haven't even gotten to the skin yet. Okay, look, there's nothing wrong with simplifying the skin shading with a ball. But in my opinion, this is oversimplification. We have bones and muscles underneath the skin, and that affects how the shadows look. Anyway, I'm using the airbrush in low opacity to apply the soft shadows. I apply it mostly on the edges of the drawing and where there are slight shadows in the references. Okay, so what is slight shadows? If you look at the reference, normally I consider this shadow, and then this shadow, and then this shadow, and this shadow, and this shadow as the heart shadow because they're really dark and have a lot of contrast. But notice the slightly darker color around the cheek. It has slightly darker shadow on the skin. And this big lighter shadow here is what I like to call the slight shadow. I don't know the visual name, so I made up my own. Maybe they're considered midtones, I don't know. Soft shadows are great to add volume and dimension, so your drawing looks more 3D. But don't really stress about it too much, we can always fix them later in the rendering. Next, I map out the heart shadow. Doesn't have to be perfect, we're not rendering yet. Okay, so back to the reference. You remember these heart shadows I was drawing on top of, right? So the heart shadows are typically really easy to make shape of. You can easily trace the shape of it compared to the slight shadows I showed earlier. So these easily traceable shapes are what I'm applying to my drawing. Like the soft shadows, don't stress yourself too much on this as well. Sometimes I mess up in my heart shadows, making weird shapes or drawing it in the wrong places. Don't worry, dear grandchildren, we can always fix it in the rendering. Let your future self do all the work. I actually shade the hair a little, but as you can tell from the thumbnail, I didn't really give a shit about the hair painting because this is a skin tutorial, not hair. I just shaded a little so it doesn't look weird. Why am I yapping about hair? Okay, back to skin. I merge all the layers because my layer management is garbage. I usually start from the upper half of the face. You know, the nose, the cheek, the eyes. Normally I would start with the nose, but since the side view noses are quite easy, I started with the eye. I color the white of the eyeball with the skin color because we can change it later, and use muted colors for the iris so it doesn't look off from the rest of the drawing. Rendering is basically painting over the sketch, but sometimes the drawing gets blurred and loses definition because we remove the sketch by painting over it. That's why you need to be bold with your hard shadows. Back to the reference. Get used to it. Take the eye socket for example. So the shadow around it is really dark, right? Like this area is really dark. But suddenly, out of the blue, this area right here gets really light. And there's not even like a gradation on it. There's just like this sharp cut from the shadow to light. If you compare it to the outer area of the eye socket, the color gradually turns lighter, but not in this area. See, it gets from really dark to really light. This contrast between light and dark is what keeps your drawing from getting blurred from painting over the sketch. Also, the hard shadows we map out before the rendering are usually not dark enough. You'll need to darken it eventually. I also don't recommend blending with smudge or blur tool because they tend to erase textures. I always blend with my rendering brush, which I will not tell you in this video because I literally made a whole video about it. And also YouTube shorts. Use low opacity when blending. I usually use around 30 to 40% opacity when blending the face because it's quite delicate, but I use higher opacity and big brush when blending larger areas. In this case, Kaya's arm and back. Yes, I'm drawing Kaya in his Sumeru outfit minus the outer. I will not shut up about the outfit once I'm talking about it, so let's move on. Get my beautiful angel. For the realistic look, always consider the face and the body as a 3D object and try to visualize how the skin is wrapped around the bones and muscles like a saran wrap.
From what in the actual fuck are you talking about? Why are you objectifying human anatomy?
Okay, fine, I'll explain. To simplify things, let's use the circle. No wait, actually, I'm sick of the circle. Always so smug with the roundness and smooth surface. Instead, let's use the cylinder. I took this picture from Google and then colored it because I'm lazy. So our skeleton contains a lot of cylindrical shapes. Our arms, our legs, our fingers, the bones are cylindrical. So instead of circles, we actually have a lot of long things inside us. Wait, imagine there's a skin wrapped around this cylinder. The skin would wrap following this direction, right? Like all around the cylinder. If we turn it into a 3D topology thing with the polys, it would look something like this. And it will be easier to visualize the wrapping. This looks very bad because I just draw it like this without any ruler, but you get the point. Let's say we put a light source here, and we can shade it according to the wrap. I just added the soft shadows and now we add the hard shadows, still according to the wrap. When you're rendering it or painting over the sketch, don't forget to make use of the midtone. So the midtone is the color between the dark and the light color. So let's pick this color in the middle. Then we use it to render the cylinder. Render the cylinder. Ooh. Now we put the bounce light here, and there is also like a shadow here. Never mind the top of it, okay? Just pay attention to this area. So this is usually how I render, especially like for the neck and also the arms. Now what about the face? Well, I suggest looking for a 3D model heads topology so you can see the wrappings. Let's try it with Kaya's face. Okay, so this is the pre-rendering state. If you make a 3D topology thing, it would look something like this, right? This is a bad example, but you get it. So the wrapping is following that direction. So the skin is wrapping around the face like that. So to render it, first let's add the dark shadows first. And then the shadows on the jaw is not supposed to be as dark as the shadow under the chin because of the light source. Okay, again, this is all depending on the light source. Okay, and then I'm using the midtones to blend with the low opacity brush. When you paint over the sketch with low opacity brush, you can see it creates this color, which is like a combination between the skin color and also the sketch. You get my point, right? Okay, so this is the color that you want to use to redefine the areas that lose definition after you paint over the sketch. Still using the low opacity brush, okay? Still using the low opacity brush and still using the midtones. And then the area below it is usually lighter. See how it creates more volume? This is the jaw before and this is after. It has more volume and looks so much more 3D and realistic. And that's how I render. Okay, now we can add more details like the eyebrows and the eyeliner. During the rendering, some hard edges like on the eye socket and aegiosal can lose definition. So I'm refining them. I also draw line art to refine the mouth line and nostrils. I actually like to outline my painting so it looks more stylized. Line art is an easy way to refine and add details after painting over the sketch. Also, I was using the reference to practice drawing back muscles, but you know, I don't want to be slapped by yellow dollars, so enjoy the blurred version. Anyway, let's move on to the color adjustments. To deepen the shadows and add more volume, I add another multiply layer on top and apply soft shadows. I apply them mainly around the edges of the drawing and parts with dark shadows like under the chin. Then I use the overlay to add saturated colors. Normally, I apply it thinly to the whole skin and then erase the lighter parts. Overlay makes any color lighter and more saturated, and the result depends on the base color. So if you have a yellow base, use red or purple on the overlay so it doesn't look too yellow in the final result, and vice versa. Lately, I've been using this method I learned from Xiao Hongshu. I made a short about it. Basically, we draw a rainbow on a multiply layer, but not randomly. The colors should be in this order. The problem is, I also have the body to worry about, and I don't know the rainbow order for the body. So I just go with my gut. Now we smudge it and then lower the opacity. Make another multiply layer and draw clown makeup basically. Smudge it again and lower the opacity. If it looks weird, you can adjust the colors in hue and saturation, change the blending mode, or just omit it altogether. But it's kind of fun to experiment with the colors, so I hope you try it and let me know how it goes. Afterwards, I use brightness and contrast, levels, and tone curve to adjust the contrast and saturation. Now I have to be honest with you guys. I was an idiot when I was doing this. I went overboard with the contrast. It caused some areas with dark shadows to turn almost pure black. It's completely fine if that's the look you're going for, but that's not what I want in my painting. So be very careful with these color adjustment tools. Always duplicate your original drawing. If you notice the dark shadows become really dark, it's almost pure black, stop immediately and undo. I will fix the contrast later. For now, I will try to soften the harsh shadows with hidden colors. This is also a method I learned from Xiao Hongshu and I made a video about it. You can check that out. Basically, we're adding colors that are very much different from the skin color. I use blue in this painting while not changing the value. So this is Kaya without blue and this is with blue. If we turn them into black and white, the value stays basically the same, except for the cheek and lips because I purposefully, with purpose, I softened them. Who made that English word? Purposefully. I want to fix the color since it's too red. Well, I was being an idiot with the color adjustments earlier. But before that, I'm fixing the facial anatomy because somehow Kaya looked like a Disney princess. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I just don't want that look. Okay, so to fix the color, I tried using hue and saturation. And turns out, all I needed was to reduce the saturation by 3%. Okay, yeah, turns out vibrant colors are overrated. Vibrance isn't everything. Sometimes being dull makes you shine even more or something. I will make a hair painting video or a hair painting shorts with this drawing, so stay tuned for that. Sorry about the rambling, my melatonin gummy is finally kicking in. So let's end the video.